the past, the present, and the future. I think these are the three big, broad brush strokes that define what this thing's all about. The first one's the past. And this is really what's getting a lot of people hung up and angry. And it's like people are arguing two different things right now. And I think what people are arguing is resume versus recency. I'll give you a little context. Before I talk about Georgia and Alabama or Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, I'm going to take you back to this time a year ago, maybe just a few months ago, right before the season kicked off. It was the point in the year when these arbitrary discussions and debates about coach rankings came out. Totally subjective. There's no real coaches poll, and I'm not talking about the coaches poll that coaches give to their SIDs and secretaries to rank the top teams in the country. I'm talking about internet polls and Instagram graphics that ranked actual coaches. And a lot of people believed it was a hot take decision to place Kirby Smart above Dabo Swinney in some of those polls. I don't know how many, I'll have to go back and look. I don't know how many put Kirby above Saban at the time. I think that would have been a little extreme just after winning one national championship. But a lot of these debates came down to, can you believe Paul Feinbaum said that Kirby Smart ranks above Dabo Swinney? Swinney has more national championships than Kirby Smart does. Well, those people were looking at this debate through the lens of resume. At the time, Dabo Swinney had a better resume than Kirby Smart. He had 2 national championship victories as a head coach. He had a perfect 15-0 season under his belt. Kirby only had 1 national championship, and he wasn't 15-0 that year. Well, now, let's look at this debate. If I told you that Kirby Smart is a better head coach than Dabo Swinney right now, would you disagree? I don't know how many Clemson fans would disagree with that. Because Kirby Smart has a resume and he has recency. Well, I'm here to argue and tell you, not argue with you, just make the argument that Kirby Smart deserves to be above Nick Saban on the list of best college football coaches right now for that same reason. It is the same reason that David Pollack sat up on the stage on College Game Day and told Nick Saban to his face, looked him in the eyeballs and said, Georgia is in control of college football right now. A lot of Alabama fans were upset about that because they were looking at what David Pollack said through the lens of resume. Of course, Alabama has a better resume than Georgia does right now. Of course, Nick Saban does. He's beaten Kirby every time they've played except for once. That's not what people are arguing when they say that Georgia has taken over college football from Alabama. They haven't taken the trophy case. They haven't taken all the LinkedIn endorsements and trophies and Heisman winners and all this stuff. They haven't taken any of that. They've just taken control of the sport right now. And what's more important than right now? Decisions are made based on right now in the sport. Coaches who win 10 games a couple seasons later get the boot. They get fired. They get canned because recency is ultimately what matters in this game. So that's the past for you. How about the present? What's the difference between Georgia and Alabama in the present? Well, if you look at college football, there is only one team that can claim the title of defending national champion, and that team is Georgia. If you dig in a little bit deeper, you do some more research, you look on Wikipedia, however you want to confirm it, there is only one team that can say it is a defending back-to-back national champion in the college football playoff era. And that is, that's also Georgia. So that's what Georgia has going for it right now. How about on the football field? Georgia's offense, led by Todd Monken, he's a savant, and the Dogs put up a lot of points this season. On defense, you've got Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann. Georgia's got more stability right now. Bama's trying to replace its offensive coordinator and its defensive coordinator. And then you look at what Georgia and Bama did this past season. The Dogs have the stability, and the Dogs have more discipline. Alabama ranked 126th in the country, tied for 126th, with the most penalties per game at more than 7 per game. The only other team in the SEC that was worse was Tennessee. And if Bama doesn't have those penalty problems, and if Tennessee doesn't have those penalty problems, then maybe it's a wash and Tennessee still beats Bama in Knoxville. But I think you and I both know that in that game, Alabama's penalties were more significant. Alabama beats Alabama. And a lot of people aren't used to saying that in college football. Georgia, on the flip side, 12th in the country. Just over 4 penalties per game. Georgia is not beating Georgia. That is the biggest difference right now in the present when it comes to defining these two programs. Kirby Smart's team has NASA-grade silicone sealant keeping everything out of the program. They just won a national championship in 2021. You got some young dudes on defense that maybe they start to feel entitled. Maybe Stetson Bennett doesn't feel like he has to work as hard. But no, that's not what happens. There's rat poison everywhere, and Georgia wins back-to-back. What does Alabama do? Well, it takes a step back. It doesn't even make it to Atlanta because they don't have as much discipline. It can change, and I expect that will be a huge point of emphasis in the offseason for Bama. How about the future? Well, in the future, it looks like Georgia has a pretty easy road and Alabama doesn't, at least until conference expansion blows up divisions as we know them. Alabama still has to contend with LSU in the SEC West. Brian Kelly and the Tigers, they ain't going anywhere. His family, it's growing. LSU is adding elite transfer portal talent. And look, Georgia and Bama can do the same thing. Both programs have elite recruiting classes in 23 and 2024. But look at Georgia's biggest threat in the SEC East, Tennessee. They do get Georgia at home in 2023. That's a huge advantage for the Vols. But when you look at the margin, the gap in the divisions between LSU and Bama and Tennessee and Georgia, which one looks like a bigger struggle? It's clearly LSU and Bama. Georgia dominated Tennessee, and I don't care to hear what your argument is about the scoreboard. Anyone who watched the game knows it. LSU's already beaten Bama. Now, flip side of that, the Tide get LSU in T-Town this season, and revenge will be on the brain. But let's take a look at that revenge. Our third R word before I hop off of here. And you can say roll tide. That might be your fourth R word. Revenge was supposedly on the brains of Bryce Young and Will Anderson and all of Alabama's football team after Georgia beat him in the national championship last season. Yeah, I think in the future, the immediate future, Bama has way more motivation than Georgia does. David Pollock gave him some. That's bulletin board material. Whether Pollock was right or wrong, that's bulletin board material. Bama's got more motivation. But motivation alone does not win you football games, does not win you a division title, does not win you an SEC championship, doesn't win you a national championship. You got to have more than that. And for right now, I think Georgia is doing more. Georgia is doing it better than Bama. The future could change that. Clemson had a similar future just a few years ago. And Bama, well, Bama was still Bama. Is Bama still Bama now? I'm not going to count Bama out. I'm not going to count Nick Saban out until he says I'm out. But when you look at what separates Georgia and Alabama in the past, the present, and the future, some arguments are different. You can consider different angles. But there are a lot of things that make Georgia the class, the standard the bee's knees, all the things you want to say they are. That's what makes Georgia, Georgia. And Bama is looking up at them right now. Hit like, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see what y'all have to say in the comments section. Roll damn dogs. Peace.